Scouts Rest. Now, Buffalo Bill, he was born way back in 1846. That's about 160 years ago. And he lived to the ripe old age of almost 71 years of age. 1970 is when he passed away. When he was out here, well, he was born in Scott County, Iowa. That's not all that far from here, about 350 miles. So he was born right here in the center of the country, and he lived there till about the age of 3, and then that's when he moved to Kansas with his parents. His parents moved down there, and he went with them and enjoyed a lot of his younger days in Kansas. Well, at the age of 12, he got his first job, and he was what was called a bullwhacker. What do you think a bullwhacker does? Oh, man, we got a whole bunch of stories here. Let's start here. That's about it. That's exactly right. Go ahead. You're exactly right. How about you? That's what they like to call themselves, was a bullwhacker. What their real job was an oxen driver. That means oxen. That's what they were bulls that they would hitch to these huge freight wagons, and those wagons were really big. The wheels were as tall as a man.
When it fires, the gas goes in here. It lights the fire inside. It lights the powder in here, and it shows a ball. Now this ball doesn't look very big, but that would be a pretty good sized hole if there was a hole that size in it.
Oh gosh.
So you could. That's what he shoots. Uh-oh. You realize what that would be? That's what would happen if a bear came. I fired it too much already. It isn't going to fire.
I saw it.
Yeah, the sparks are coming off, but I'm not getting enough. That flint's That's what it did, and then it would fire. Now this was the flintlock. This is a percussion. It used caps, almost like caps on a cap gun, to go on here. The problem with, this was about 1832, but the problem is, if I'm out of caps, all I've got is a club, because I can't fire it. If those caps get wet, it won't fire. And by using a flintlock, even after those guns came out, they preferred these because I can go down to the river and find a rock that'll fit this. I can make a flint for this. In the mountains especially, you can find it.
To my grandma's house. That was my art house.
Where are we going?
So you water and Morgan also.
No, that's a hat.
Anyway, right at the top of his neck, behind that collar, is where you will place it after he's weathered. They're each 15 hands tall. Most saddle horses are stabbed between 15 and 16 hands tall. These are 2 to 3 hands taller than a saddle horse. That's 4 inches.
American saddle horse.
Pardon?
Yes.
God's going to talk to you today about spinning and weaving, and basically it's about making clothing. And you've been studying Nebraska history, and years ago everybody pretty much had to make their own clothes. If you got cold in the winter, you were going to have to knit your own socks and mittens and scarves and maybe shawls or blankets, weave blankets to keep warm. That's where these things came from. They found evidence of spun and woven items in ruins, the Indian ruins in Arizona, in Egyptian pyramids, and buried in peat bogs in England from centuries and centuries ago. People have been doing this for a long time. So the first thing that you have to start with is you have to find some fiber that you can spin into a yarn. So does anybody know what I'm talking about when I say fiber? Right? Any other ideas? What else could you use? Hair? Yeah, you could use hair. I'm going to show you some different kinds of fibers right here. We start with animal fibers. Here's some sheep's wool. Here's some from a llama. Here's some from an alpaca. Here's some from a camel. And all of the animal fibers are warmer, so people who live in colder climates like here would probably use mostly animal fibers. We have some plant, well, and they probably didn't have camels here to use, though. True, or cotton. But what kind of a woolly animal lives in this area that the Indians and the pioneers?
Because the big wheel is so much bigger than the little wheel, every time the big wheel goes round, the little wheel goes round several times. And when you turn the wheel, what happens is you pull little bits of fibre out of the wool in your hand, and as the wheel turns, you get a twist in the fibre, and that's what gives it the strength. And as it twists, then you just let it feed into the hole here, and it winds onto the bobbin. You see it goes in this little hole here, and then it winds onto this thing, which is called the bobbin, and we have these hooks on here that you can alter where the wool's going onto so it fills up evenly. And you can see when I've spun it, when you pull on it, it's nice and strong, that's not going to break, whereas this stuff on my hand just kind of comes apart really easily. Now usually when you spin, you don't, if you're going to do some knitting or something, you don't just spin, you don't just knit with a single strand of wool, you usually want it two-plied. So after you fill two of these bobbins, you'd run them back through this hole and you'd spin in the other direction and you ply them together. So my plied wool would look like that when it's plied together. And then you'll be all ready to knit something or maybe crochet something. And Maureen's going to tell you how that's done.
Well, if you're going to knit, you're going to need some tools. And I've got some right here. These are called circular knitting needles. Usually if you think of knitting, you think of those big, long, shiny sticks, and they're kind of scary and big and funky. Well, these are kind of new. They're just a needle right here. This one's made out of bamboo. Sometimes they're metal. Sometimes they're made out of birch or rosewood or something. And then they're attached to this bendy cord. And you can use this to knit round things like sweaters or
know that there are that many towns around North Platte? Huh? How many do you know?
Yeah.
Hershey, Sutherland, Maxwell?
Wait, no.
Well, you have to look around, boys. Find out what we have.
Here we go. Anything interest you in any other part of this excursion today?
Take some pictures, roll up pictures of any of them.
Hey, alrighty.
Alex likes to jump the
Oh, Alec went to jump the creek.
creek.
Did he make it?
Wanted to.
Oh, okay.
Wanted to. Someone had the idea.
Hayride, you betcha, that's good. Neat, big, powerful critters they are, aren't they? Blacksmithing is really interesting. Yep.
When we were in and people started following us.
Ooh, that was really educational.
The schoolhouse, and I was the dun. I had to wear the dun.
Okay. Yes. To what? Nieces that are still around? Yeah.
Right here.
Oh, really?
Straight
Alrighty. Cool. Not all that far from here. The next state to the east, about 350 miles from here, is where he was born in Scott County, Iowa. Lived there until he was about 3 years of age, and then when his family moved to Kansas, he moved with them. And that's where he started his real life as a plainsman, as a person of color. Colorful person, absolutely. In Kansas, he never went to school formally. He went to school with his sisters. He had 4 sisters and an older brother. His older brother was killed by a horse when he was pretty young. The horse reared up, fell over backwards on him, crushed him, and he survived a couple of days and then died. So Cody was the only son then. Cody's dad was stabbed in an altercation and never really regained his health. And so he wasn't able to work very much. And so consequently, like I said, Cody was Buffalo Bill. William F. was the provider for the family, basically. And so he went to school with his sisters, and they just for the purpose of protecting them. He was there to oversee that they did not have any harm brought to them in some fashion.